Hello and welcome to the Stitch Together podcast. My name is Chrissy and I shall be your host today. Today is the 19th of September 2014 and this is the third episode of my video podcasts. I'd like to say thank you to people who have come back to watch the next episode, especially those who've moved over from the audio podcast. I'm really pleased that you've come with me on this new adventure. I don't know how many of you are here, but I hope it's enough. And I feel that I'm getting more feedback with doing the video podcast than I did with the audio podcast. So hopefully you won't mind too much the change of format. I'm enjoying doing it a bit more than I was the audio podcast, or I would enjoy it a bit more if I wasn't having problems with my technology. The episode you're going to watch today is a bit choppy, so because of things disappearing into the ether, shall we say, they're unrecoverable, the files that went kaput. So you've got a bit recorded at the beginning, which was actually recorded after the end. I hope it doesn't annoy you too much. And I'm also going to have to chop the video into segments, but I don't think you'll mind too much once you get used to it. I'd also like to welcome new people who've come to the video format, who might have found us on YouTube. It's really nice to have you here. And I hope you enjoy your stay. And I also hope that people new and old come across to the Ravelry group, which is the Stitch Together Designs Ravelry group. Every time there's a new episode, I post in that Ravelry group along with a link to the show notes, which are also over on the website, which is www.stitchtogether.co.uk. And if you click on the podcast button at the top of the screen, that'll take you through to all the episodes, and you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on YouTube, and also using a RSS reader, which there's a button on the page on the podcast section of the website, which will give you that link if you want to follow the podcast over there. So all that out the way, it's lovely to talk to you again, and I think we'll start off with Done and Dusted. Done and Dusted, for those who don't know, is the stuff I finished. I don't know if it's just a UK idiom. It's done and dusted. It's done and dusted. So that's an explanation for those who haven't heard the phrase before. I shall start off with a project you probably didn't know I was knitting if you're just a podcast viewer or listener. Now, this project hasn't had the ends trimmed. How embarrassing. I do apologise. This is the Radiance shawl by Helen Stewart, and it was the first half pie shawl I ever knit. Not this particular one, but as an adventure into new shawl shapes. And I've actually knit this particular pattern. This is the third time I've knit it, and this is actually the third time I've used Malabrigo lace, and this is the first time I'm going to keep the project. And the colourway is Indicita, and it's a gorgeous soft yarn. It's lovely. It's just pure merino, and it's a single yarn. It's only got one ply, and it makes it very soft. I think it's probably going to be quite fragile, but I'm not particularly hard on my shawls. This is, wearing it like this, it's just lovely and warm. And the other two versions I did in Fibre Spates Scrumptious lace, and because it was all silky and drapey, it was more of a proper formal shawl. Whereas this is more bouncy, it'll come back into shape more easily, but it's also much warmer because it's just merino. So wearing it as a sort of scarfy shawl, like you'd wear a shawlette, I think works really well. But because it's a decent size shawl, it's actually really quite nice and cozy if you just wear it as a shawl. I don't know if you can see, it comes down to, it's a decent length. Actually, I blocked this differently from the other ones I did. I decided I was going to try threading the wires through the picots at the edge. So what I did on the previous ones was I thread the wires, the blocking wires, through this edge here, which is where there's a row of increases done and it creates a ruffle. And I usually just put the wire through the garter stitch bit and just left the ruffly bit to just hang, which gave it a really ruffly kind of nature. But I just thought I'd give it a go because it's really opened up this bottom section of lace, whereas when you just left it to hang, you didn't really get to appreciate as much of this bit. And this has actually stretched out the ruffle section quite significantly because of being blocked and pulled taut. So it's actually increased the size of the shawl quite a lot, actually. I like it, I think. I'm not sure. I'll see how it goes long term. And if I decide that I'd quite like the ruffly bit back, next time I wash it, I'll block it differently. So yeah, Helen Stewart is a podcaster as well as a designer. She is the Curious Handmade podcast. It's an audio podcast. She is an Australian by birth who's been living in London for quite a while. And I love her designs. In fact, this was the first one of her patterns I ever knit. And I love the way she lays out her patterns. She has charts, she has full written instructions which are really clearly laid out, and she also has like a summary section at the back, and it's like a boxed list. You've got the row number, you've got short directions, and then you've got a percentage of the shawl that's been knit at the end. I mean, it just moves forward every 10-20%. So at the beginning it takes quite a while to notch up a percentage point, but towards the end of the shawl it's happening all the time. And it's kind of nice because you sort of think, oh, I'm at 20%, I want to get to 30%, and it sort of urges you on, but also it gives you a guideline for how much yarn you need to finish it, which is, I think, really nice. So this pattern was the first half pie shawl I ever knit, and it was the first pattern of hers, and I really, really like the way she does it. And this is a really nice, simple shawl. It's a really good introduction to doing like a full-scale lace shawl pattern. If somebody is using 2-ply for the first time, it's a good shawl for that. And if they're not very confident with lace, sort of complicated patterns, these are all just like yarn overs, knit 2 togethers, yarn overs. Knit 2 together, SSK and yarn over, and those are the only sort of bits of lace knowledge that you have to do in order to complete this shawl, apart from the picot, but you don't need to put the picot on, and that's easy anyway. It's just knitting a couple of stitches before you cast off the next one. So that is the Radiance shawl by Helen Stewart in Malabrigo lace, the Indicita colourway, and it's beautiful and soft and light, and I shall wear that quite a lot, I think. And following on from Helen Stewart's pattern, I've got another one that I completed, and I can't remember if I shared this with you or whether it was still in the blocking pile. Anyway, this is Pebble Beach by Helen Stewart once more, and it's knit in I think it's Islington by the Kettle Yarn Company, and it's 55% BFL and 45% silk, and this is the Old Smoke colourway. And I got this yarn at Fibre East. The pattern was released after the Unwind Brighton event, and it was in the programme. It was voted for. I actually voted for it to be in the programme because I just love the design. I thought it's great. It's a great use of a single skein of sock yarn. So I knew that I wanted to buy yarn specifically for this project, and I went to Fibre East. So I went to the Kettle Yarn Company booth because the pattern was written for, might be the Westminster. I might have got these the wrong way around. I'll put it in the show notes. It's so I knew I wanted to get yarn from the Kettle Yarn Company because I liked the photos I saw of Helen's samples. So I went into the stall. In fact, it was one of the first booths I went to, and I just went giddy because the yarns were gorgeous. Sadly, the stall holder wasn't there, so I didn't get to meet her, but the yarn I got wasn't the one that was written for the pattern, but I just fell in love with this because I want to do more neutral colours for my accessories because I don't really have an awful lot in my accessory wardrobe, which makes it hard to like match them up with clothes that I've got. So there are some shawls that I can only wear with one particular outfit, and it just seems a bit of a waste. So I wanted to do some more neutrals so I could just grab them and wear them with whatever I happen to have on. And I think this will go with everything because it's a sort of beigey grey. It's really neutral. It's lovely, and it's a really simple lace pattern. It's probably a good introduction to shawl patterns for somebody who wants to have a crack with 4-ply because it's simple and it just sits really. I really like these sort of extended half pie shawls. Basically they're half pie, but they've got extra increases, so you get a bigger wingspan, so it's more shallow, and it's a really useful and versatile shawl, and it feels lovely with the BFL silk. It drapes beautifully, and it was fun to knit. I knit it really quickly, and yeah, I highly recommend it, and I can see myself knitting more than one because it really is nice, and the yarn is lovely. It was a swine to ball up, I will tell you that now. It was horrific. It took me hours, and I posted on Twitter that it was driving me nuts, and Instagram, and so many people contacted me saying, yeah, it's gorgeous yarn, but isn't it a nightmare to wind it into a ball? So that's a warning, but it is gorgeous yarn. So that's another Helen Stewart pattern that I know I'm going to get a lot of wear out of. And finally, my final done and dusted is the Cool Clavicle cover by Megan Williams of Stocking Out Zombies. And there we go. It's in the Sweet Georgia Tough Love sock in the Tea Party colourway. See if I can bring it. I don't know if you can see properly. It's moving around quite a lot, so it's probably hard for it to focus on it. But it's a very, very simple shawl. And it looks so much more complicated than it is. It's very, very straightforward, and yeah, don't be put off by how complicated it looks initially, because it's not. The cast on edge is a little different from anything I've tried before, and I know some people have struggled with it a bit. But if you follow it through literally, you know, take every single word as it comes and do exactly what it tells you, you'll get it. And once you get it, you get this amazing effect along the top edge. It looks like a stocking stitch, a top edge, instead of, you know, the usual garter stitch you get at the edges to stop things rolling. So you get this smooth looking top edge, which is really nice and soft against your skin, and it doesn't roll, because in actual fact, instead of it being a stocking stitch, it's actually a 1x1 rib, which gives it that sort of smooth unrolling appearance. And again, it can be used as that kind of scarfy look, or it can be used as a shawl, and it's a nice size for just covering the tops of your shoulders, your back, and of course your clavicle. And I like it. It's a really different colour for me. I don't normally go for these sorts of colours, but I do like this darker contrast, the dark red with the bright green and the sort of charcoal colour in between. It's, yeah, I really, really like it. It's a really interesting pattern, and the two two main stitch patterns in the shawl are ones I'd not really come across before. So it's, yeah, it's fun. It's really enjoyable, and highly recommend it. So those are all my patterns that are done and dusted, all my projects that are done and dusted. So I think we'll move on to Nose to the Grindstone. In Nose to the Grindstone, there are 4 projects I want to talk to you about. The first one you've seen before, and that's the Vedbeck shawl by Karina Westerman of 4th edition fame. And this shawl has obsessed me. I have knit on this so much, and I'm not really sure where I'm going with it at the moment, because the pattern is easy to increase, so you can put an extra repeat in. However, the repeat's quite long. It's several rows. It's like, 12 rows repeat sort of thing, which means that it's actually quite a chunk at the end. And I wasn't sure if I would need to, if I had space to, because I got to a certain point and I thought, kind of need to think about maybe starting the end. And I was actually kind of halfway through the repeat, and I thought, dare I risk doing the full repeat and then doing the edge border and then having no yarn to finish, or do I rip it back and end up with loads left over? So I don't know. I've got to the edge, and I've started doing this little arrow thing. It's hard to show. Don't know if you can see that properly. That's a bit better. It's not blowing it out as much. Anyway, this sort of little arrow thing, and I think I've probably done it the wrong way around. I should have probably carried on with that repeat and then done the border. I shall do some weighing on my little scales, because I've been doing that quite a lot through the pattern, because I've done these kind of transition sections here where I've done sort of 3 rows of each colour to make it less of a hard line, to sort of drift it more, because there is quite an abrupt change from this section into this section a bit less so, and the next section will be even less obvious. So I don't know. I shall, like I say, I shall weigh it. I've got a little jewellery scale that I use, which I got for about £10 off Amazon or something, and it's just really handy to pop your skein on at the beginning of a row and on the end of a row, and sort of work out how much yarn a row is taking, and sort of roughly estimate how much you're going to need for the next few rows. So I've been doing that, but I don't know. I mean, it's a really good size already. I mean, it's, it's a decent, and it's not blocked yet, because that'll stretch it out a bit. For people who haven't seen the episode before, this is knit in Jameson's Spindrift yarn, which I got given as a gift many moons ago by my brother and sister-in-law. And it's nice to actually be able to knit something nice with it. It was one of those occasions where I just fell in love with the yarn, got the yarn, didn't even think about what project I was going to use it for. Just didn't cross my mind, just thought, you know what, I like that yarn, I want it. So yeah, it sat in my stash for quite a while waiting for the right project. In fact, it was one of my favourite things in the world is when a new pattern comes along that I really like. I go into my stash and search and see if there's any stash suitable in for this project, and I just love it when that happens. It's like, yay, I've got stash for that. So yeah, it's always nice when that happens, because then you can queue it up, match the pattern and the yarn, and know that if you are looking for a project to cast on because you've finished what you've currently been working on, you can just go to your queue and go, oh look, I've got the yarn for that. I don't even have to buy anything. It's nice when that happens. So I'm also working on a new spinning project, because the projects I'm currently working on, I'm trying to be consistent with my yarn. I'm trying to get what I'm aiming for at the end, rather than just spinning and it becoming a yarn that I just use what I get. So I was kind of having to really quite concentrate, especially both sets of spinning are quite difficult to spin because they're very fluffy. The alpaca merino silk I've got from John Arbon is very wispy and it gets everywhere, and the Countess Ablaze, what is it? It's either camel or llama and silk. It's very fluffy and gets everywhere. So they're both quite tricky spins. And I wanted to do something a bit easier to sort of shift things up a bit. And I was looking for something to start, and then I got a parcel in the post. I wasn't expecting this parcel. It came from Deb at Fondant Fibre. And I opened it up and there was this really beautifully packaged tissue paper, ribbons, all the rest of it, stitch marker like Deb always does. And it said on the label, not Chrissy's colours. And I went, what's she talking about? And then I remembered in the first episode, I was talking about her colourways and how they're not stuff I go for normally, but for some sort of form of witchcraft, I've fallen in love with her versions of them. So I opened up the package, and what I got were these, and they're so not my colours. This soft baby pink and beautiful delicate peach, and they are Polwarth, Falkland, bamboo and silk, and they are a dream to spin. It's just wonderful. And of course I just laughed my head off when I opened it up, because I thought, she sent me this just to have a laugh, for me to sort of like laugh out loud when I open it. It's the only reason she sent it. She's such a good friend. And this is what I've got thus far. And I'm just doing it long draw. This, by the way, is an Enid Ashcroft spindle in Bacote and Ebony. And it's one of my favourite spindles. It's lovely to spin on. And I'm just long draw. I'm not even trying to control it. And it's just drafting like a dream. And I love long draw now. I finally got it. It took me months to understand how to long draw. And I think that's because I was trying to work it out on my own through YouTube videos. And it took me a very long time to get the hang of it. But now I can see why all the supported spindlers were saying long draw is the way to go with supported spindling. I can see that now. And it's so easy, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm sort of just trying to do a pony a night kind of thing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Deb at Fondant Fibre is a genius at making rolags and ponies. They are beautiful. They are wonderfully prepared. They are incredibly reasonably priced for the labour that goes into them and the material she uses. Highly recommend her. Go and have a look at fondantfibre.com. And fibre is spelled R-E, the English way. And I think the Canadian and the Australian way, I think. It's a Commonwealth thing, I think. Anyway, the other two projects I wanted to talk to you about are old projects, and they are ones I have dug out in order to take part in the WIPCrackAway Cal with Knit British and Yarns from the Plane, which are both British audio podcasts, and I really enjoy both of them. And I like chatting to both of them on Twitter and things as well. They're good fun, good people. And they decided they wanted to do a knit along, which would hopefully get rid of some of the older projects you've got knocking around. So I've got a few, not millions, but I have a few. And the two that sprung to mind were, firstly, my Professoressa cardigan, which is being knit in Cascade 220 Sport in the doe skin colourway. And it smells really strongly of soap, because I got, it was in a swap. I got like a really highly scented handcrafted soap. And I thought, you know what, that'd be great for keeping moths away. So I put it in this sealed container, which had some of my older stuff in. And it smells really strongly of the soap. It's lovely. It's really nice, because I don't really use solid soaps. I prefer using liquid soaps and sort of shower gel. So I kind of use any handcrafted soaps. I use those for the scent more than anything, because if you're a knitter, you want highly scented things that are pretty to keep away the moths. Anyway, this project was from my own knit along. It was the first knit along I did with the audio podcast, which was the Crafting Library knit along. And this was from one of my Crafting Library books. And it's a really lovely pattern. And it's got this really interesting twisted stitch cable that runs down the front borders, and you knit them along with the main body. And it's all knit in the round, and it's got faux seams at the side. And it's nice little garter border at the bottom. And it's great fun. Except I'm having to do loads of maths, because I decided, as it's this really fitted, smooth, classic kind of cardigan jacket, I wanted it to be tailored to me. So I used the Amy Herzog Knit to Flatter book to sort of understand where I should put extra increases, decreases and what have you. And I've done some sort of extra decreases at the front to decrease for my waist, which is quite small in relation to my bust and my hips. And I've put in so sorry about that, decreases at the back, increases at the back even, and decreases at the bottom here. So there are decreases at the back to the waist, and then fewer increases on the back from the waist, because my back is relatively narrow for my bust size. So I wanted to keep it snugger on the back and increase faster on the front to make more shape for my bust. I think I might have increased too far. It might be all right, thinking about it, if I position it in the right place. Yeah, that's actually okay. But I stopped because I knew I was going to have to do some more maths to work out what I needed to do for the armholes. That's the only reason I stopped, the only reason. And I put it away, and it was out of sight, out of mind, especially as the knit along had stopped. So I really want to pick that up now, because it's the right time of year for it, because it's a sport weight, and it's an open fronted jacket and cardigan, I should say, and I think that would be nice to wear in autumn as either a jacket for wearing out the house, and in winter for wearing as a cardigan in the house. So that's the first one I want to do. In actual fact, I've not picked that one up yet, because I started with this one, which is actually in a bag that I made. I think it's an Amy Butler sort of decor fabric, and I made it so you could, these eyelets, so I can either have it as a sort of tote, or you can use these end eyelets and put a long strap to wear it over the shoulder. And I lined it in this nice stripy fabric, which was an Amy Butler fabric, and I put a zip pocket in. And I basically learned how to make bags from Lisa Lamb, her book, which is the Bag Knitting Bible, I think. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's a really, really good book if you want to learn how to make bags. And it's step by step with photographs. It's incredibly good if you want to learn how to make them and you're not really confident as a sewer. In fact, I learned to sew really from making bags using Lisa's free tutorials on her website. So if you ever want to make your own project bag and you've got access to a sewing machine but you don't really know what you're doing, go and look at Lisa Lamb's website. And again, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, as well as the link to the book, which I highly, highly recommend. I really do recommend it if you ever want to learn to sew bags. But I can't really spend much time at the sewing machine anymore, and bags like this are quite complicated because there's lots of different steps to it, and it's difficult for me to spend a lot of time at the sewing machine. So if I kind of have to, every time I sit down, I have to work out where I got to last time, it means it takes 3 times as long. So I kind of don't really sew them much anymore. In fact, in months. Anyway, this bag was one of the last ones I made. And inside it is a project I started in 2011. And it is the Modern Quilt Wrap. And it's, let me look it up, by Mags Candice. And I'm showing you the back. You don't need to see the back just yet. It's in Rowan Kid Silk Haze, which is beautiful but expensive and incredibly hard to frock if you go wrong. In fact, I did go wrong just before I started recording. I put a square here that should have been here. So I couldn't rip it out. It was so snarled up. I had to cut it out, which is always nerve-wracking because you think, I don't want to cut more than I want to. But it was successful. It's just made it a little bit out of shape here. But like I say, this is expensive yarn, and I would never normally be able to knit this project because there's lots of different colours. So, gosh, it's warm. It's most of this yarn was a bequest in a way from a knitter I've never met. The yarn came to me a convoluted way. My mum has a friend who I've never met, but she's friends with my mum, and she knew that I was a knitter because it was something they talked about, because this woman's daughter was also a knitter. And sadly, her daughter passed away, and she was trying to sort through all of the stuff and work out where it needed to go, and she found this big bag, you know, all her stash, and thought, well, I'll give it to charity. But then she thought again and said, you know what, I don't really know anything about yarn, so does your daughter want to have this? And I thought, oh, I don't know, do I want it? It's probably going to be full of cheap acrylic. Is it worth mum transporting it down the motorway? But I said, you know what, yes, because if it is cheap acrylic, I can use it for toys, I can use it for baby blankets, it'll be used, and if I don't use it, I'll give it to people I know at my knitting group who do charity knitting, who will be more than happy to knit dog blankets out of it. And it's better for it to go to people I know will use it than it to sit in a charity shop not getting sold because people don't know it's there or they don't know what it is. And I was quite glad when my mum arrived. We opened it straight away. And I opened the bag up and my eyes just about popped out of my head, and I just went, ooh, pretty. It's Rowan Kid Silk Haze. Single ball, no ball band, but I recognised it instantly because I know their colourways. And I took that out, and then I took the next one and the next one. And it wasn't just Rowan Kid Silk Haze, but there was a heck of a lot of it. There was also lots of other Rowan in there, and I think this bag must have been worth about £200-300 in total. And if it had been donated to charity, it wouldn't have sold for anywhere near that, because most of the ball bands were missing, because a lot of them were partly used. So it never would have sold for the full value. And I just thought, I really want to make something very special with this kind gift. And I decided that I wanted to make this modern quilt wrap, which I'd seen quite a few times and just fell in love with, but knew I'd never been able to knit it because I couldn't get that many skeins of Rowan silk haze. I just couldn't afford it. And it's been a real pleasure to knit this, but it is a bit of a faff if you go wrong. I'm actually weaving in the ends as I go because there are a lot of colour transitions in this. Let's see if I can find one you can see. So you kind of weave in around the working yarn each time you make a stitch, and it kind of carries it along the back of the where the two skeins of yarn meet. And with this yarn, because it is so difficult to frog, because it's so hairy and it just knits together, meshes together really well, I don't think I'll need to do any more weaving in than that, and I'll just be able to trim the ends and it'll be fine. There are places where I've not been able to weave them in because they're on the outer edge and you're going the wrong way. So those will need to be woven in, but there won't be anywhere near as many. In fact, I got the tutorial for that is linked on my project page, and there's a link to the project page on the show notes. So if you want to learn how to weave in ends as you go, that's a really good tutorial. In fact, I use that on most things now if I'm weaving in as I go. And I started knitting that straight away as soon as the knit along started, because I was challenged by someone else in the knit along. They sent me a PM saying, I challenge you to knit one square tonight, and I did, and it got me picking it up. So I'm trying to do a bit every day, because that's the only way it's going to get finished. So I'm not trying to do it all in one stretch, but I am trying to do a bit every day, and I'm really enjoying it. The colours are great, and yeah, it's a fun project. So those are the things I'm currently working on or thinking about working on. So I think that's all my nose to the grindstone section. I have several bits that I didn't get to show you last week. So what I'm going to do is spread those out over the coming weeks so you don't get bombarded with a marathon chunk this week. So the first thing that I got week before last was from somebody I've bought from before, which is the Wool Barn. These lovely bags are hand stamped by Maya, who owns the Wool Barn, and the little bags that you get a yarn in are just a really nice little touch and shows her thoughtfulness. The yarn I really wanted to get was another self-striping sock yarn, and I just fell in love with this beautiful colour. Well, colours. It's rust and a kind of deep maroon and charcoal grey and black, and it's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. It's a different base from what I used before. The one I used before was a 100% BFL, and I loved it. It's a gorgeous yarn to knit with, and I love the socks that I got from it. And this is a different base, and I thought, oh, I'll give it a go, especially because I really love the colours. And it is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon, and it's 100 grams, 400 metres or 437 yards, and it's a 4-ply. I love it. It's beautifully wound. I love these self-striping balls when they're hand wound like this. They're just so beautiful, and it looks like it's been handcrafted with care, and yeah, really like it, and I'm really looking forward to knitting with it. They'll make fabulous socks. I think these might be the next self-striping ones I put on the needles, because they're kind of Halloweeny and autumnal, and I think it'll be appropriate for knitting in October. I really like it. It's beautiful. The other yarn I got from Maya was this one. This one's going to be a hard one to show you because it's a more red purple than that. If I put it against, no, it's a bit more like that. It's a bit more like this. It's a very wine coloured purple, and it's a 100% superwash merino high twist. It's a 2-ply. It's very soft and fluffy, but it's got that nice robust plumpness you get when you get real high twist in the yarn. And it's 100 grams, and it's 365 meters or 400 yards, and it's deliciously squishy, and I think it's going to make a beautiful cowl or little shawlette kind of scarf thing, because it's really beautiful, and I think it would make a great lace because it's a semi-solid, so it would really show up quite a complex lace pattern beautifully. I love Maya's attention to detail. I mean, things like that it's a hole punch in a cat shape for the label to attach, and the fact it's hand stamped, the logo. It's a really lovely attention to detail that she's got, and really love her yarn and can highly recommend it. There's a link on the show notes to her Etsy shop, but it's the Wool Barn on Etsy, and yeah, I really recommend it. And Maya also very kindly sent you a present as well. She sent you a set of stitch markers, and they are all different colours of these beautiful Russian dolls in different colours, and holding them is a little skein of yarn which has got a lobster claw, so you can use it for marking what side or the beginning of a round, or you can use it in crochet. I think lobster claw stitch markers are quite useful even if you're a knitter. So if you want to win these lovely stitch markers from the Wool Barn, then go to the giveaway thread on the Ravelry group, which I will open as soon as I post this video, and there'll be a link on there to go to the Wool Barn. So go to the Wool Barn, have a look at her colourways and her yarn bases and stuff that's already sold, as well as the stuff that's already in the shop, and tell us which your favourite yarn base is or your favourite colourway is. And I shall draw for this, I think in 2 weeks, because not the next podcast but the one after, to give people time to see the episode and put an entry in. So I think that's what I'm going to do with that. So go over to the Ravelry group. You have to be a member of the Ravelry group to win a prize. If you are not a member and I draw your name, I will put it back in and I shall draw again. And there's no reason not to be a member of the group, because it doesn't cost you anything. You don't get bombarded with anything. So go and join the group and maybe join in some of the chat. Maybe introduce yourself. Nice to know who you are. I'm hoping that some of the newer people who've come across because it's a video podcast rather than an audio podcast will come and introduce themselves on the introduce yourself thread, or even share an FO or something in the FO thread, because it will be nice to meet the new audience and to join in the community over on the Ravelry group. It would be lovely to meet you. So that's a little present for you. I've also got some yarn from one of my favourite indie dyers, one of my longest term indie dyers that I found quite early on in my knitting career, because she was the friend of a member of our knitting group, and I saw this member knitting beautiful socks in amazing colours, and I was like, wow, that's incredible, where did you get that from? And she said, oh, my friend dyed it, her name's Baby Longlegs. And I went, and of course I bought stuff because her colours are incredible. She has quite a small selection of bases of yarn that she uses, but the kind of base that she's got works really well across the different weights of yarn, and they're well tested, they're well known and well used, and they're good bases. And her sense of colour is incredible. I mean, she loves bright, saturated, sort of almost clashing colours, but at the same time she's really good at semi-solids as well, and she's really good at doing custom dyes as well, and she's got a slot in her big cartel shop where you can contact her and ask for a custom dye, and I don't think it really costs that much more than buying what's already made up in her shop. Anyway, I follow Sarah on Facebook, and she posted this new colourway that she'd been working on that had really sort of fired up her imagination again. And I saw this colourway and I just went, I have to have it. There's just no other way around it. I have to have this yarn. And I got it on a superwash merino nylon sock, and it's 425 metres, 464 yards, and the colourway is out of the black, and it's rather impressive. Isn't that amazing? Such beautiful blending of colours. It's really an amazing colourway. I just had to have it. Her photos are really good and they're really accurate as well, so you really know what you're getting when you order from Sarah. And these are definitely going to be socks. I don't think they can possibly be anything else, because they will just make me so happy to wear socks made out of this yarn on my feet. Just think it's fab. So that was what encouraged me to go over and buy the yarn. And when I was there, I bore in mind the fact that I was trying to do more neutral colours in my accessories. And on the page that I opened up, there was this, which is the granite colourway. And the yarn base is one of my absolute favourites, which is semi-precious. And that's 50% silk and 50% superwash merino, and it's quite soft and silky and drapey, but for a wool silk blend it's actually quite robust. I've got a few accessories I've knit in this, so I can tell you that they're all still looking really good. So it is one of my favourite bases because it feels really luxurious, but it lasts better than you think it's going to last, and it's gorgeous. And I think that this yarn will make a beautiful cowl or shawlette. It'll be fabulous, really good. And then I put through my order and went away, and I was thinking I really want to get a skein of double DK weight merino in a semi-solid, because I wanted to knit the rookie hat again, and after frogging it when it was in the alpaca silk because it was just too drapey. The original pattern, the pattern was written for a quite round, plump, bouncy merino yarn, and I thought, well, I'll try and find an indie dyer in the UK who will do a similar kind of yarn in a nice semi-solid colourway. And I thought it'd be kind of nice again to get it in maybe a grey colour, because then it would go in my winter coat and I could wear any shawl or shawlette around my neck or any kind of mittens or gloves. It wouldn't clash with anything. It would just look nice and stylish, and it would go with everything. So I was looking at various indie dyers and going, that's not quite the right grey, that's not the right kind of base, not sure. I just couldn't really find anything. And then I got contacted by Sarah saying, I can't find that skein of yarn you bought, the granite, but I'll dye you up another one. It'll just mean it's delayed by a day or two. And she said, I've got the grey dye bath going. And I went, yeah, that's fine. And then I went, would you stick one of your DK merino skeins in there as well while you're doing it? Because I really want a merino DK in grey. And she said, yeah, no problem. So along with my semi-precious in granite, she did me a DK weight superwash merino. This is called Mes Merino. That's her DK superwash merino base, and it is really, really squishy and bouncy and plump. It's a fabulous base. And it's the first time I've used this base. I've just been looking for a reason. So it seems stupid for me to go looking for other dyers when someone I knew and trusted was already dyeing a grey in a different base. So I thought, that's stupid not to take advantage of that. So the yarn is 230 yards, 210 metres, and it's 115 grams. So it's a decent sized skein. And the colourway is shades of grey. So it was a custom dye for me, but I'm sure if you asked, Sarah could repeat it. So yeah, that's going to be a Ricky hat as soon as I get round to it. And it's kind of nice buying yarn for a particular project, so I don't often do it that way around. So those are the skeins of yarn I want to tell you about. And I've recently purchased a tool that has made my blogging life and my online life a little bit easier. Now, I didn't know this particular tool existed until very recently, and this tool is called an MPOW iSnap shutter control. Now, this is a little Bluetooth gizmo that you sync up with your Android or iPhone or iPad or iDevice, and you can use that button to control the camera shutter. Really simple bit of gear, really quite cheap. I've put a link on the show notes to a website when you can get it. And this shutter control means that I can take selfies from a couple of feet back, which is really handy when you don't want to do a full photo shoot to show off your nice new finished objects, especially for me because I'm not always well enough to do so. And yeah, I love having the finished polished photos in the sort of nice plain background, well lit, nice camera, good quality. I love doing those, and I will continue to do those when I've got the energy, because quite often what happens is I end up waiting weeks and then doing a whole batch altogether. And it means I'm not posting any finished object photos for ages. And this means that I can step back from my iPad or my Android phone and take selfies without having to do T-Rex arms, which is fine if you're doing it for a hat or a cowl or something. But if you're doing it for a shawlette, it's not impossible. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll insert a photo here. And that photo shows you the cool clavicle cover that I took using my iPad and my MPOW iSnap device. And it's really cheap, really simple. You just move the control from I to A for Android or iDevice, and sync it up, press the button. Simple as that. And I thought I would tell you about this tool because, like I said, I didn't know these devices existed until very recently. And as soon as I found out about it, wanted to get it. So I did, and it's successful. And if, like me, you don't want to do a full camera shoot, but you can't grab hold of a member of family to take a photo of you with your phone, this is a very useful little thing. So that's my recommendation for a tool. this week. The next section is online community. And this week I got a prize in the post from the Absolutely blog. And this prize was something I was quite excited about. It is Malabrigo Nube. Nube? Nuba? I don't know. How do you pronounce it? Does anyone know? Nube. Anyway, this particular colourway and blend of fibre is one I've actually already got in my stash. I've got 2 braids of this in my stash. I got it quite early on because I made a brickless out of the Malabrigo Rastita, which is this base of fibre spun into a DK single. And I really, really love that shawl. It's more like a scarf, big chunky scarf. And I wanted to spin something similar in order to make like hat and mitts to go with it. So I bought it, and then I sort of looked at it because it was last year and I wasn't as confident with my spinning, and I thought I don't want to wreck it, and it's quite dense fibre. I think it'll need quite a lot of pre-drafting. It's not been compacted, it's just, I think it's very sticky fibre. It's got quite a crimp to it, very, very tiny little crimp, and makes it fluffy and soft. And I think I'm going to put those 3 braids together. That's 12 ounces of fibre. And I sort of think, well, that's an awful lot of fibre. Maybe I should use it to make something else other than a hat and mittens, because there'll be stuff left over. So if anyone's got any suggestions of what I could spin and make with 3 braids of 4 ounces, 113 grams each of this beautiful merino fibre, I would love to hear from you. I don't know what to do, but I know I want to do something rather special because it's the largest quantity of fibre I've got that's been dyed. So I'm kind of excited about the idea of doing something a bit special with it. So ideas of how to prep or spin or whatever, or just what project I could make, gratefully received. So yes, I wanted to share that with you and suggest you go and look at the Absolutely blog because it's fun and interesting, and it's a really nice read. I was also contacted a month or so ago by somebody from on Ravelry, Gardening Witch, and she wanted me to tell you about a event that's going on the 2nd of November later on this year at the North Herts College in Hitchin. And the event is Festival, and I've put a link on the show notes about it. It's a 1-day event, it's on a Sunday, and it's celebrating all things woolly, and I think there's a fashion show and there'll be stall holders, things like that. So go and have a look at that if you are in the area at the beginning of November. As well as the stitch marker giveaway, I have something else to give away this week. The very lovely Louise Tilbrook, who is a member of the group and gave a prize away for the craft along, has contacted me because in the Where I Live craft along, she designed her first shawl pattern, the Autumn Crocus shawl pattern. And she would like to give you lucky people a chance of winning 1 of 3 copies of that pattern. So I've put a link on the thread, the giveaway thread on the Ravelry group. Go across there, click on the link, and it will take you to Louise's designer page so you can have a look at the shawl and work out what you'd like to knit it in. And what I want to know from your entry in the giveaway thread is what yarn you would use to knit this lovely shawl pattern. So go across, have a look at her pattern, decide how much yarn it needs and what kind of yarn it needs, and tell us what yarn you would use. And if you would happen to insert a picture of said yarn, that will be greatly appreciated because we all like looking at pretty pictures of yarn, don't we? So again, that I'll keep that open for 2 weeks. So not the next episode, but the week after. I'll do the drawing for that, so people have got a chance to see this and enter. And that's your lot. I do apologise for the break in the middle of the podcast. I will hopefully do it differently next time. And until next week, enjoy your crafting. I hope it all goes as planned. And if not, you don't get too upset. So lovely to spend time with you again, and come over to the Ravo group and have a chat in between times. If not, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. There are links over on the show notes page to how to contact me, and it would be lovely to talk to you on there as well. So goodbye and speak to you soon.